Let's take a look now at a poll that was done by InfoTrack Harris just in today, and this is what Kenyans feel about the Pope's visit. Well, most people actually favor the Pope, and this is Kenyans, you know, across the divide because of his perceived humility, optimism and inclusive tone. Those who have a favorable opinion of him at 87% and an unfavorable one at 2.1%. Let's move on and take a look at what Kenyans feel about the church's direction. 84% of Kenyans think the church is headed in the right direction, 95% of them being Catholic. Christianity's direction in general, these are the approval ratings, still pretty high. Kenyans, that's across you know, the divide, at 85% supporting the Christianity's direction in the country, 98% of Catholics approving of the same. Let's look at the global leadership of the church. Kenyans, again, a wide spectrum, supporting it at 85%, Catholics supporting it at 95%. And now to, I suppose, the core issue from this poll, which is the message that Kenyans want addressed by the pontiff during his visit, the question of peaceful coexistence, good governance, human rights, corruption, leadership, and immorality. Those have been your views, and joining me now to discuss more on the same is Bishop Anthony Muheria of the Kitui Diocese, and you are also in the Pope's steering committee. Thank you for coming to the program.
Thank you too.
So I want to start with the very basics, which is, I mean, 4 days to the visit. How can Kenyans, if at all there is still space, participate in the Pope's visit, and at what stage would you say your plans are?
First is to say the visit of the Holy Father comes in a time when we need a lot of hope, a lot of big, deep messaging as a nation, and even a sense of consolation, a sense of empowerment that we need to continue as a nation and also as Christians. I would like to invite everyone who is able to come to see him, to receive this message firsthand as far as possible. So for those who do not have a card yet, I would invite them to have recourse for the Catholics. They know in the parishes, in the various offices that we have, they can always they can come and ask for a card, and they should be able to come in without big difficulty. For we want as many to participate. We know that the numbers may seem big, but we are still inviting all persons who are able. Those who do not have their church nearby can always come to our Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops, and with a recommendation from someone, one of the priests or their pastor or their leader, we should be able to accommodate them to any of the events. For the youth, we look forward to a big turnout, and I'm particularly concerned, and I want to encourage the youth to come up, because the Pope has a very powerful message for the future of the country, and the youth hold it in their hands. Okay, so there's still a chance. There is a good chance. Right there where the Pope is. Very good. Let me focus on what the poll said, because this is the indicative of the heart of Kenyans and the message that they want to hear. And I want to start with the question of peaceful coexistence. What are the things you would say that cause us to be intolerant, and has the church played the right role in bringing the country together? I think that question has a lot of facets. The first is, I think, the intolerance that has been growing, I would say, is growing. We shouldn't compare ourselves with other countries, but I just think it's been growing largely in the sense of a sense of despair in some quarters. Some people have been feeling a little bit left aside, and at times that leads people to look for other avenues that are not right. The intolerance also has come perhaps because we've closed in into ourselves. I would dare say we may have been too individualistic. We've taken in a very individualistic look at things and closed off God. The space has become very much I and less God, and that has led to a certain lack of relationship with our neighbors, with our people we're dealing with. So this has created very much almost a defensive kind of attitude of my space.
I suppose popular culture teaches that, and I hear this said often, God helps those who help themselves. And so people feel the need to take a certain degree of responsibility for their own lives.
Yes, I also think that there is a lot of, I would say the ill that ails us is more in the heart. It's that we seem to have lost a little bit of that refinement or connective tenderness and connection with others, because maybe a lot of things have been in the last 20 or 15 years. A lot of things have been directed to performance, to my status, to heaven. And so these two issues which have come in more lately, that is greed, self-interest, the craving for power, which are all biblical, and actually they are also traditional, they are not new things, have taken too much space, and this has made us intolerant first at the basic level of just stepping on others to get up, intolerant that we are not listening enough, intolerant also because we are not accommodating enough. And Pope Francis' visit here is coming to us to tell us, hey, open your hands, open your hearts. The human beings, your brother, your sister, they're an image of God, and you should treat them with the fullness of humanity. And that, I think, is going to be a very, very powerful message of Pope Francis to Kenya and to all humanity, to Africa in general too. And
yet the criticism of the local church would be that it has not done enough to promote inclusivity or speak out loud enough against division in society. What is your response to that?
I think the first is, I think we've done a lot. It's enough to look at what we went through, the post-election violence, the amount of effort we went in trying to bring sanity to the thought, to the people, to what they were expressing. We always try to bring about that voice of reason whenever there is an opportunity. However, it is also true that we can do a lot more. A few examples. Bishop Cornelius Corrie, for example, in Eldoret, has been spearheading peace talks, the talks of bringing about the fights and finding a common ground and a way of ending the strife that has been there between Rodwa and Pokot. There's a lot that the church is doing with the justice and peace commissions that we are doing. And in every statement of the bishops, when we do make, there's always a very good passage, particularly referred to this. What often happens is perhaps it's not amplified enough. Maybe
so the church is speaking, but no one is listening?
I would say it's not always amplified by our means of communication. We would wish it were much more amplified when it comes out. But by that, I also think is a challenge for us as church. We can say more, we can speak more, we can do more, because it's not just the church. There is also the other part that we always think that the church is the bishops. The bishop has to speak more. I also think that those who claim to be Christians and that they are part of the church have to do more. So it's a call for all, the Pope coming. It's a call for all to take our own responsibilities, and also even for us as church leaders to do a lot more.
All right, I want to move very quickly to the last two things that were very important based on that poll that we've just showed you. And the question is of leadership, and part of the concern is that the church itself, its leadership has not been above reproach. We've seen the fake miracles. We've seen people, being asked to give huge sums of money in order to receive, some miracle in return, or even immorality creeping among its leadership. And the feeling is that the church has lost the moral authority, to speak to the kind of leaders that we have in public service if it has been unable to root out bad leadership within itself. What would you say to that, and what concrete action has the church done to crack down on fake leaders, if you like?
I think the first thing is to distinguish between the very broad statement as church and to distinguish between churches. I do believe that we as Catholic Church have been trying, and I think quite honestly there is a very clear integrity in what we've been doing. This also happens in most of the mainstream churches which we have seen. However, there are mushroom on churches who, using the goodwill of our Christians, the religiosity, attract, and in doing using deception, using deceit, bring about things which of course are not godly, and secondly they have nothing to do with the church. So I think we should distinguish that. We as church should try more and more to try and single out, at least flag those who are not church, they are not Christians in their behavior. So we as church, within the Catholic Church, we have our means of addressing those issues where there are issues of integrity, issues of behavior. But as a conglomerate, if you may say, when we speak about churches, Christian churches, it's not an easy thing to rein in persons who we don't have control or authority over in those mushrooming churches.
All right, finally, Kenyans want the Pope to address the question of immorality, and we've been racking our brain in the newsroom to try and define what immorality is in a very secular, if you like, national context. What is immorality?
Immorality, first and foremost, is what is inhuman. Immorality is inhuman, because in all of us there is something deeply inscripted, you may say, that makes us understand what's right and wrong, that makes us understand what should be the right conduct, human, and what is inhuman, beastly. And immorality is what destroys that which is good in us as humans by our very actions.
Give us a modern example, if you would, of things perhaps that we've mainstreamed into society. Take, for instance, materialism. It is very important for people to feel affluent, you know, to be able to do more than just meet their basic needs, but, you know, to live perhaps a good life, however one would define that, you know, monetarily.
In many ways, in traditional church, we speak about virtues and vices. Part of this, and in our country, for example, corruption is immoral. But many times, using euphemisms, we call it eating, we call it tea, but it's still immoral. It is an action that is not right and upright. The actions which are, for example, if stealing, actions that are also behavior that sexual behavior that is wrong, that is within the wrong context, exhibitionism, for example, that is immoral. Why? Because it degrades the person and degrades the others. Immorality is lack of respect. That is also immoral. Greed is immoral. Stealing, being and oppressing the poor is immoral. So there is a whole spectrum which we speak about, the 7 capital sins normally. That is the tradition that we speak about, the cardinal sins. We can't go through all of them here, but also we also speak about vices, negative things within us that goes against what we call the natural law, what is supposedly written to the human being as right and wrong. Basically, in Christian tradition, that comes in the 10 Commandments. Whatever goes against the 10 Commandments is immoral, no matter what we call it.
Wow. I think that's a great place for all of us to pause and think about maybe some of the things we've mainstreamed, and where we could do a little better, maybe a lot better.
There is a lot.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very much
for your time, and we wish you success in the upcoming visit.
Welcome too.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll see if I can make my way to one of those venues. Perhaps I'll be on air. Anyway, we're taking a short break on Sunday Live. We're back with some more news after this, please.